Hello, and welcome to a book or two to review. I've lost track of which one it is, honestly. I should know this one. I think it's episode 22. It is. It's a book or two to review, episode 22. And I'm just about to begin recording a huge load of them today. So I am wearing my very nice hat, which you can find on my Spreadshirt store. Sorry, no, it arrived and I'm just modelling it out. I haven't got a slide, but I have been telling people when they've been viewing my videos, there's currently a bet going on, a familial bragging rights of my aunt, that if I can get to 13,000 subscribers by December 31st, 2021, she and my uncle will be pictured wearing Blackburn face masks. So please, if you do like, subscribe, and watch some more, and maybe share, because currently I think I'm orbiting just below 6,500 subscribers, so I think she's feeling fairly safe and confident about winning this. Anyway, today's book, Roman Conquests by Simon Elliot, and it's Britain. And I'm going to start off by saying this, as I always acknowledge with Simon, he's a personal friend. He is an amazing historian, he is a very nice guy, and he still owes me lunch. So, leaving that all to one side, though, you are going to get an accurate review, because I can afford to be accurate. What I tend to do with books, when they're my friends' books, is I ignore them and tell them privately, but I don't put it out publicly. So, if I'm putting it out publicly, that tells you it's a good book, and I'm happy to recommend it. Now, this is a very, very good book. It's thorough, and it's interesting, and it's intriguing, and it has descriptions of things like Britain in the late Iron Age. It has the various conquests and campaigns, and it even has a very good outline of Severus's campaign in Scotland. And actually, Chapter 7 is where I'm going to go to give you an example, because I find it really cool. And also, this is something which is good about Simon. I don't think I broke the back there. I have been reading it a lot. Now, these are what you don't expect. Some good, lovely black and white images. But here we go. Accurate, pictured ones, coloured ones. These ones are, of course, painted, but Simon has managed to find a very good artist who is prepared to do a very accurate rendition. And then you have some of Simon's own models. I know he's going to try and claim they're not his models, but I know Simon. The man is an avid modeler. And these are some of his own pictures wandering around the sites. It's gorgeous. It is very well put together. And it's just lovely to read. Anyway, Septimus Severus in Scotland. In AD 2207, the great warrior emperor Septimus Severus was born in Rome. After securing the throne by the defeating of Albinus in AD 997, Severus had turned his attention back to the eastern Parthia. His campaign there proved a great success, with his forces sacking Parthian capital Ctesiphon in AD 198. Before leaving, Severus then expanded the limes Abracus along the eastern frontier, in the process constructing new fortifications in the Arabian desert, including those at Azraq, Roman Basinius in Jordan, and Duma al-Judah, Roman Dumasha in modern Saudi Arabia. He then toured his eastern provinces, a process that lasted 4 more years before returning to Rome in AD 202, where he celebrated his decennalia with victory games and oversaw the marriage of his eldest son at Kassala. He stayed only briefly. The native North African, never comfortable among the political classes there, and later the same year returned to his native Lessus Magna in Africa, Prosculus. There he initiated an energetic building program, this including a new forum and basilica, a colonnaded streets, and a new harbour. Late in AD 202, he then launched a campaign against the Garamantes Berber tribe, who were causing trouble along the lines Tropolonis. Their Legio III Augusta under the legate of Quintus Asinius Faustus had been fighting an intensive campaign to prevent raiding into rich farmlands of Tripolitania on the North African coast, with steps already underway to further fortify the border. Typically, Severus now took matters in hand and launched a campaign that penetrated far to the south of the Limes, capturing several significant oasis settlements, including Samaris, Golia, Garbia, and the Garamantes capital, Garama, the latter over 600 kilometers south of Lepus Magna. He then incorporated much captured territory into Africa Proconsularis and further fortified the border. This campaign over Severus continued his travels westward in North Africa, spending time in Numidia, where he again expanded imperial territory by annexing the settlements of Vesera, Casalimdimidi, Gimale, Farbus, Furbandai, and Zabi. Then, reluctantly, he returned to Rome again. The most military of men was never happy in the imperial capital, with constant political machinations and temptations. However, a new opportunity soon presented itself for further martial adventure. This was in Britain, whereas the 3rd century AD again, renewed conflict again broke out in the north. Severus, brooding in the imperial palace, was apparently angry when news reached him that the governor, Lucius Alvanus Seneca, was winning wars in the province while he was reduced to leading a campaign in the Apennines against a bandit uprising. The emperor was further displeased by the way his sons Cassala and the younger Geta were behaving in Rome, indulging in a life of luxury, clearly at odds with the old warrior's martial nature. Forever squabbling, the former was already displaying his psychotic tendencies that were to later cost his younger brother his life. Severus therefore jumped at the chance as Seneca wrote to him in AD 207 with alarming news. Herodon, our only source here, describes the letter thus. The governor of Britain informed Severus by dispatches that the barbarians there were in revolt and overrunning the country, looting and destroying virtually everything in the island. He told Severus that he needed either a stronger army, usually interpreted as a request for more troops, for defense of the province, or the presence of the emperor himself. Severus was delighted with this news. Glory-loving by nature, he wished to win victories over the Britons to add to the victories and titles of honour he had won in the east and the west. Given Herodian's known inaccuracies in his life of Severus, the veracity of his account and the very existence of Seneca's letter needs to be considered in the first instance. Burley highlights that the classical historian was well known for the use of the rhetorical topos, a stock formula such as a pun, proverb, cause and effect, or a comparison. We have 2 specifically relevant instances of this where he utilized the existence of a letter similar to Seneca's from other provincial governors in his later work to justify imperial expeditions. These were with regard to Syria and Mesopotamia, and to Illyria. In the former case, the dramatic events described in the letter requiring the emperor's attention actually date to 5 years earlier than the communique, a fact that leads Burley to reject Herodian's narrative regarding Seneca's letter as pure invention. However, if we were to take Herodian's story at face value, then context is very important, as we consider this famous request, given it is so often the starting point for the narratives regarding the Expedio Felicissima Britannica. After the period following Albinus' usurpation, attempt when the new governor, Lupus, had had to weather severe agitation along the northern border by buying the invaders off with huge subsidies, Rome was again starting to assert its authority in the north. By way of example, we know that Lupus and succeeding governors, including latterly Seneca, had started the restoration of a number of the installations along Hadrian's Wall, with auxiliaries used to build a new granary at Birdswold. They also refurbished defences south at Corbridge, and restored buildings at Chesters and Housesteads. Meanwhile, a victory dedication by the Ala A Estorum under Seneca's governorship at Bowel indicates military success on his part. This thought to relate to events in AD 206, when Dio references victories in Britain. This is likely the source of Severus's irritation detailed above. However, all of this positive activity seems to have changed in a very short space of time. With some kind of calamity in the north, and perhaps even further south, we take Herodian's interpretation of Seneca's request at face value. Given we have no data to allow us to interpret what the crisis in AD 207 actually was, the request and the emperor's very rapid, seemingly over-the-top response requires further consideration. In the first instance, Herodian's reference to the emperor being delighted seems pretty clear-cut, especially in the context of his concerns with the behaviour of his sons in Rome. A blunt reading of the primary sources indicates that the threat was sudden, very real, and that when presented with the opportunity to intervene, Severus couldn't wait to get stuck in. However, others have raised issues with taking Herodian at face value, however, and above Burley's wider reticence regarding latter. Wilkes, for example, has questioned why Severus would trouble himself with disturbance on the fringes of Rome's most remote province for the last 3 years of his life, given the primary sources also tell us the emperor didn't think he would return alive once he committed to the expedition. Meanwhile, Rankov suggests Severus was actually far more concerned with re-establishing his authority over the military in Britain, given it had been the seat of Albinus's earlier attempted usurpation. He says, the expedition was as much concerned with re-establishing the loyalty of the army as with dealing with barbarian incursions or the conquest of Scotland for its own sake. This interpretation of the letter from Seneca, if it existed, might therefore have been part of a plan concocted to give Severus an opportunity to carry out an expedition he wouldn't normally have had a motive for. This is an interesting argument, given Severus had already sent his commissioners to Britain in the immediate aftermath of his victory over Albinus, and at the same time temporarily combined the command of the regional fleets in the west under one commander. Further, it was his commissioners who initiated the building of the land walls of Rome and London, to remind the elites in the provincial capital who the boss was. Matters with the military must have become very strained indeed, if all the above had failed to extent to it that the emperor had to come up with some kind of diplomatic ploy. However, as Hodgson counters, if the loyalty of the British army was really the only issue, one wonders why Severus left it so long. He was freed up from his eastern walls by AD 201. Rankov might be right to sense Severus' long-standing fear of disloyalty in Britain, but wrong to dismiss the seriousness of the barbarian incursions. Comes up with an interesting point. And it often is interesting when you're talking about these books. In Roman history, it's often a constant trope. There was a letter, there was a panic governor, or the previous commander was terrible. This new commander comes in and does the proper rites, does the proper duties, and we win. One often wonders if doing the proper rites and doing the proper duties and, the proper religious ceremony, they're a good way of buying time to reorganize matters. After all, while you're gathering the required goods for doing a proper religious ceremony, your troops have to spend every day training hard, and your supplies can get organized, and you can find the idiot officers and have them quietly got rid of. There are lots of options. It's the same with this letter. Now, the thing is, he could have been just killing multiple birds with one stone. He could have been going there to ensure the army's loyalty. Could have been trying to teach his son some martial discipline because he's worried that they're going nuts. And honestly, the elder son, considering the family history, etc., I'm wondering if he was experimenting with some very powerful hallucinogenics, which you could get in ancient Rome. We like to think we discovered opioids in the modern era. We didn't. But, saying that, for a governor to send a letter like that, it is kind of suggesting they've lost control of the situation. It's not good for your governor's career. Your career in Rome, you're rising up through the ranks. None of these things are good. If you admit you have failed so badly, you are either having to require a massive army be sent to you, or the emperor come himself. Because if the emperor comes himself, he is bringing a massive army. He just ain't turning up otherwise. So this is the problem. Which do you believe? And in the end, does it matter? This book goes on and tells you the entire route of conquest they took into Scotland, all the things that beset the campaign and all the issues they had. The reforging of the Antonine Wall, the reforging of Hadrian's Wall. And this is one of the things which is often forgotten. The big thing that Rome had was infrastructure. That's what we talk about the Dark Ages and the period that comes after it, and it's always considered it's terrible. They must have been so ill-informed, uneducated, etc. No, quite a lot of people were very educated. But there's a difference between being educated and being able to implement infrastructure. You need a government. You need an organization. It's like, whenever you get into debate with people of going, we don't need any governments, or anarchy, or those things should rule. Well, that's lovely. It's great for people who have skills with shooting guns and can control things for as long as it lasts. But the trouble is with a lot of those ideas is not in their pure and not in necessarily their best form or their theoretical form, but in their practical application. What you usually get is a breakdown in law and order, followed quickly by a breakdown in infrastructure, because who do you complain to that the roads are bad? If you're responsible for everything yourself, who do you complain to? Who do you complain if the sewers don't work? So yes, whenever you're hearing people shout about small government or big government, they're using extremes. The answer is we do need some form of government. The answer that the Romans, real secret to the Roman success, was they had a functioning government. That was what allowed them to form a massive empire. It was when their government started to break down, and honestly, the people started to be just absurd in how they were running it. That's when they had problems. We talk about their army commanders, the legates, and all these things. Those are the appointments. They're the senior officers, the strategic officers. They're not the professional troops. The professional troops are the legios, the optimos, the NCOs, as we would probably consider them. And those are thoroughly professional soldiers. And then you have the political classes coming in. They have to get experience. They have to earn their way up. Because if they fail at any point, then they don't get promoted any further. So it's a very draconian. You're either good at it or you're not. And then you go back and you do a civilian role, a civilian post in government. And you're either good at that or you're not. In which case you ain't getting any further. Romans had infrastructure. They had government. That was the secret to their success. Their organization. Their unity. And that's the thing that's missing in the Dark Ages. Which aren't really that dark. And aren't really that terrible. They're not great, but they're not absurd. We just call them the Dark Ages because that then makes us we can then sort of build up more the medieval era and then the Renaissance, and suddenly history looks like an onward marching progress from this down point to this great and glorious point, which is good for some groups of historians, but not real. History, and this is the dirty little secret of history, it doesn't proceed in straight lines. It likes to wiggle. It likes to go all over the place. You ever watch any economics graphs or anything like that? They don't go in a... They do... And sometimes they do... And then they go up a bit. And it's all over the place. Well, that's the same with history. There is no nice linear progression. It doesn't exist. Like many of the hypothetical ideas bandied around as easy, cheap political catchphrases. Always remember, it's not the first 10 words which tell you the truth in any political debate or any discussion. They're the tip of the spear. It's the 10 words which come after that, and the 10 words which come after that, and the 10 words which come after that, which try and explain it. That's what you have to ask questions about. The first 10 words, they're just a catchphrase. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you very much for watching. That was episode 22 of a book or two to review, and that was Roman Conquests of Britain by Elliot. Really good book. Well worth a buy. Link down below.